30 years ago, Hollywood was trying to replace him in Good Will Hunting.
She woke herself up. Yes.
That attempt to replace Matt was a passing studio suggestion. And look, a DiCaprio Pitt version of Good Will Hunting sounds interesting, but starring in the film wasn't some bonus Matt and Ben hoped to negotiate. It was the reason they'd written roles for themselves. Whenever executives said unknown writers couldn't demand that much control, Matt pointed to Sylvester Stallone. Stallone had written Rocky and refused to sell it unless he played Rocky himself. Matt later said Stallone's courage changed the course of their lives. The gamble worked. Matt played Will, Ben played Chuckie, and both won the Oscar for their screenplay.
Everybody back in Boston watching us tonight.
And thank you so much, the city of Boston, and God, I know we're forgetting somebody.
Whoever we forgot, we love you and we
love you. Thank you so much.
Matt also received a Best Actor nomination for the role Hollywood wanted to hand to somebody safer. At the time, I can see why Miramax wanted him. Braveheart had just come out and Gibson was one of the hottest directors in Hollywood, but there was only one awkward detail. Matt and Ben hadn't actually seen Braveheart. Their relationship with a possible director began with a fake movie review. He spent several months developing Good Will Hunting, but the project kept moving slowly and Matt started worrying that he and Ben would become too old to play the characters they'd fought so hard to keep. Gibson understood and stepped aside. That opened the door for Gus Van Sant, who had already rejected Matt for To Die For because he looked too much like a jock. The role went to Joaquin Phoenix instead. Good Will Hunting became a second chance for both Matt and Elliot. After a while, Matt and Ben began wondering if anyone at the studio was even reading their new pages, so they tested that theory with a screenplay equivalent of pulling a fire alarm. Their idea was to hide something no careful reader could possibly ignore. In the middle of one rewrite, the stage direction suddenly had Sean open up to Will. Will gives him a soulful look, and then the scene goes somewhere that definitely wasn't covered by Sean's therapy license. Matt Damon said they wrote an entire explicit paragraph between the film's lead character and his therapist. It had no setup or any consequence, and absolutely nothing to do with the rest of Good Will Hunting. If you ever sent someone a document and received "looks great" before they had enough time to scroll past page 1, you understand the frustration.
Okay? He looked at a piano, and it just made sense to him. He could just play.
So what are you saying? You play the piano?
No, not a lick.
Most people might hide a typo or slip in a ridiculous sentence. Matt and Ben completely changed the relationship between the movie's two central characters. Castle Rock continued returning notes, but nobody mentioned the scene. Their test had worked in the worst possible way. The studio controlling their film wasn't reading the rewrites closely enough to notice that Will and Sean had suddenly become very close. It was bait placed inside the screenplay, proving that Castle Rock wasn't paying attention. Still didn't give Matt and Ben their movie back. For that, Ben turned to a director who read every page, although where he read it wasn't exactly glamorous. That director was Kevin Smith, and the glamorous location was his toilet. Ben handed Kevin the screenplay and asked him to save them, possibly by directing it himself. Kevin later said he started reading it in the bathroom and stayed there until he reached the end. I don't know which detail feels more like Kevin Smith, reading an Oscar-winning screenplay on the toilet or freely admitting it years later. He loved the script. Then he immediately refused to direct it. Kevin told Matt and Ben that he wouldn't dare because the writing was beautiful and needed a filmmaker better suited to it. In an industry where people accept jobs they don't understand every morning, knowing when to step aside probably qualifies as a rare technical skill. But Kevin didn't simply hand the script back. He personally carried it into Harvey Weinstein's office in Miramax and told him to stop what he was doing and read it. Weinstein did, and returned with 2 notes. Remove the chess material, and remove that suspiciously explicit scene hidden in the rewrite. For the first time, someone had noticed their trap. Miramax reportedly bought Good Will Hunting from Castle Rock for more than $1 million, with Matt and Ben still attached to star. Kevin saved the movie largely by understanding that he shouldn't direct it.
When they asked me, I was just like, you know what? I love the script so much, I will ruin it. This needs to go into like the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. And that was Gus. It turned out to be Gus Van Sant. Did a wonderful, wonderful job.
If you'd still choose Matt and Ben over Hollywood's Brad and Leo version, tap the like. Kevin clearly made the same choice. Now they needed Boston to feel real. So Robin Williams walked into a Southie bar. But interestingly, Southie had a few questions for him. Those questions started with one man wanting to know where Robin had parked his private plane. Robin wanted to understand Sean McGuire's neighborhood. So he asked Matt and Ben to show him the real South Boston. They took him to the L Street Tavern. The neighborhood noticed. A crowd formed around them inside the bar. One local approached Robin with such a heavy accent that another man had to translate his question about the private plane. Meanwhile, a drunk customer reportedly tried to start a fight with Ben because he was wearing his baseball cap backwards. Apparently, that counted as sufficient cause in 1990's Southie. Matt and Ben got Robin out without anyone being hurt. I love that Robin's response wasn't, "Never bring me here again." He wanted the tavern in the movie. Robin called Harvey Weinstein and insisted they shoot there, even though Sean didn't appear in any of its scenes. Harvey eventually agreed, and sent Matt and Ben a fairly clear message: don't take Robin to any more locations. So the bar survived its encounter with Robin and made it into the film. Chuckie wasn't nearly as lucky in Gus Van Sant's next version of the story. I mean, not emotionally, but we can say literally. During one round of rewrites, Gus Van Sant suggested killing Chuckie in an accident at the construction site. Matt and Ben immediately thought it was a bad idea. Gus still asked them to try it, so they went away and wrote a version where Chuckie was crushed, as Matt later described it, like a bug. Then Gus read the new pages and reached an important creative conclusion. His idea was terrible. To his credit, he didn't defend the note or blame Matt and Ben for writing it badly. He simply threw the entire death away. That may be the healthiest disagreement anyone had during this production, and Chuckie wasn't the first character marked for removal. An even earlier ending had Carmine, the bully Will attacks near the beginning, return with his friends and kill Will with a baseball bat. Matt said the idea was that Will almost wanted it to happen because death offered another way to escape his future. I'll admit that sounds like a completely different movie. Chuckie's construction site speech works because he pushes Will toward a better life. Killing either of them would turn that friendship into punishment. So settle this one for me. Would Chuckie's death have made the film hit harder or simply ruined it? Either way, death wasn't the biggest thing removed from Good Will Hunting. An entire government thriller disappeared, and a legendary screenwriter helped convince Matt and Ben to let it go. Killing Chuckie was the most personal cut, but it wasn't even close to the biggest one. An entire other movie had to disappear before Good Will Hunting could exist. And when I say government thriller, I don't mean the quiet NSA interview that remains in the movie. In an early version, Will was a physics genius whose mind attracted the NSA. He and his friends then spent large parts of the story giving government agents a slip around Boston. Ben later compared its tone to Beverly Hills Cop and Midnight Run. So picture the Harvard bar scene followed by a government chase through Southie. I'd watched that version once. I'm just not convinced Robin's bench speech lands the same after a 10-minute pursuit. Rob Reiner saw the problem. He told Matt and Ben that two different movies were fighting inside the screenplay. An action thriller and a character story about Will's relationship with his therapist. They had to choose. Matt and Ben kept the human story and removed most of the NSA material. Their screenplay dropped from roughly 120 to 130 pages to just 60. Matt remembered looking at what remained and wondering what the movie even was anymore. One piece survived though. Will's recruitment interview, where he explains how working for the government could eventually hurt innocent people.
Say I'm working at the NSA and somebody puts a code on my desk, something no one else can break. Maybe I take a shot at it, and maybe I break it. And I'm real happy with myself because I did my job well. But maybe that code was the location of some rebel army in North Africa or the Middle East. And once they have that location, they bomb the village where the rebels are hiding. 1,500 people that I never met, never had no problem with, get killed.
Will's talent changed too. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Sheldon Glashow persuaded them that mathematics worked better on screen, then connected them with MIT professor Daniel Kleeman to make the equations believable. But Matt and Ben still wanted another opinion in Reiner's enormous note. The legendary screenwriter spent one day with him and agreed. That small contribution somehow became a rumor that he wrote the entire film. That screenwriter was William Goldman. And if you don't know him, well, he isn't some random person giving notes over lunch. Goldman had written The Princess Bride and won 2 Oscars for Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid and All the President's Men. He spent one day with Matt and Ben, read their draft, and agreed with Rob Reiner. The government thriller was distracting from the relationship between Will and Sean. That was his contribution. Then Good Will Hunting became a hit. Matt and Ben started winning awards, and people decided the story sounded too perfect. Surely 2 young actors hadn't written an Oscar-winning screenplay by themselves. Goldman must have secretly rewritten it. Apparently, being young and photogenic counts as evidence against knowing how to type. Goldman repeatedly denied the rumor. He said it drove him mad and explained that he'd met with them for only one day. More importantly, he praised what was already on the page. I understand why people questioned it. Hollywood has quietly repaired plenty of scripts without advertising who did the work, but when the legendary writer supposedly denied credit keeps saying, "I didn't write it," eventually the conspiracy starts requiring more effort than the screenplay. Matt and Ben wrote Good Will Hunting. Goldman simply confirmed that its quieter half was the better movie. If you love digging into movie behind-the-scenes stuff, subscribe. The next 4 stories are the ones that actually change the scenes themselves. And the very first one came from a director who fixed the ending, without ever reading the script once. Goldman confirmed what was already there. The next person they called didn't read a single page, and somehow still fixed the ending. That director was Terrence Malick, the filmmaker behind Badlands and Days of Heaven. Malick was close friends with Ben's godfather, so Matt and Ben arranged to meet him for dinner. They didn't read their screenplay. They simply sat there and explained the entire movie to him. At that point, the ending had Will and Skylar leaving Boston together. Malick listened and suggested something. Skylar should leave first. Will should decide to follow her later. Matt said he and Ben looked at each other and immediately knew Malick was right. Malick started talking about Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni and how, in some Italian films, a man simply leaving town can be enough of an ending. I think that one adjustment completes Will's story. If Skylar takes him with her, she makes the decision. When Will follows alone, he finally chooses a future without someone dragging him toward it. Skylar's name was personal, too. Matt borrowed it from his Harvard girlfriend, Skylar Satinstein, who later married Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich.
Hey, it's Lars from Metallica here. I'm about to stick 50 grand up your ass. $1 at a time.
That belongs in a much louder romantic drama. And during Skylar's bedroom story about becoming an NBA player, Matt reportedly fell asleep for real while Gus Van Sant filmed around him. So Malick gave the movie its final destination without reading one page. But when Sean discovered where Will had gone, Robin Williams gave that ending its final words, and nobody had written those either. Those final words were, "Son of a bitch, you stole my line."
Son of a bitch, you stole my line.
The script ended with Sean finding Will's letter, but it gave Robin Williams no dialogue afterward. So Robin tried different reactions across several takes. Around take 9, he read the note, paused, and found the perfect callback to Sean missing the World Series to see about a girl.
Just slid my ticket across the table and I said, "Sorry guys, I gotta see about a girl."
Matt Damon immediately grabbed director Gus Van Sant. They knew the movie had found its final line. Robin, apparently unconvinced by perfection, carried on for another 5 or 6 takes. Matt's already up. We got it. We got it. Robin's not moving. One more. It's perfect. One more. Same line. Somehow still funnier. But he had already broken Matt in an earlier scene. While Sean was remembering his late wife, Robin went off script and described how she used to pass gas in her sleep, once loudly enough to wake the dog. Matt's laughter is completely genuine. Look closely and the camera begins wobbling too. Apparently because the operator was struggling to keep it together. I can't blame him. Robin remains completely sincere while Matt slowly folds beside him, and the joke actually deepens the scene. Sean doesn't remember his wife as some flawless movie romance. He remembers the embarrassing little detail that made her human. Grief, love, and a badly timed bodily function, all sharing the same couch. Matt later called He Stole My Line Robin's finest addition to the film. Robin could transform a scene while the camera's running. But the next scene survived word for word from Matt's original 40-page Harvard draft. If you guessed the park bench, I would have guessed it too. But it wasn't the bench speech. It wasn't "It's not your fault." The only scene that survived unchanged was Will and Sean's uncomfortable first meeting.
I'm pumped. Let's let the healing begin.
Matt Damon first created Will during his 5th year at Harvard. His playwriting professor asked for a one-act play. Matt handed in roughly 40 pages of a movie and essentially said, "It may have failed the assignment, but this is the beginning of something. You've done a version of this. Not 40 pages of a future Oscar winner, probably, but everyone's turned in something they knew was too big for the assignment because the assignment was never really the point." That beginning was repeatedly dismantled. The government chase disappeared, characters changed, entire sections were rebuilt with Ben Affleck. But Will walking into Sean's office survived verbatim, and I think you can see why. In a few minutes, Will studies Sean's painting, works out that his wife died, then turns Sean's grief into a weapon. Sean responds by grabbing him and making it very clear that there are limits to how clever Will is allowed to be.
She, banging some other guy.
If you ever disrespect my wife again, I will end you. I will fucking end you.
It contains their entire relationship in miniature. Will uses intelligence to keep everyone outside. Sean becomes the first person who refuses to stay there. You probably know a version of Will. Might even be you on a bad week. The person who'd rather win the argument than admit they're scared of losing something. Being right is so much easier than being honest. After all the studio notes, discarded plots, and famous directors offering advice, the emotional center of the film was already sitting inside Matt's college assignment. The bench scene came much later, but after Robin Williams died, that ordinary park bench became something nobody involved in the film could have written. On August 11, 2014, Robin Williams died at the age of 63. By the following morning, people were arriving at the Boston Public Garden. They left flowers around the bench, covered the pavement in chalk, and wrote lines from Good Will Hunting, Dead Poets Society, Huck, Aladdin, and the rest of Robin's career. For a few days, that corner of the park became the world's least organized and probably most heartfelt Robin Williams retrospective. This part always gets me. The bench wasn't a monument. It didn't have Robin's name on it. It was just where two actors sat beside a lake while Sean explained that reading about life isn't the same as living it. Even people who think the rest of the script is a little corny will tell you that line still gets them, especially now. Knowing it was one of the last things Robin Williams ever said on screen that the whole world would remember him for. If you've got something you still blame yourself for, something, logically wasn't actually your fault, that's exactly why the scene doesn't age. It's not really about Will. It's about the one thing most adults are still quietly waiting for somebody to say to them. Fans made it important because of what Robin did there. Matt later returned with his family to remember him. In 2024, he even supported a proposal for a bronze figure of Robin beside the bench. The idea was that if someone felt alone, they could sit next to him. That feels right for Sean Maguire. He wasn't the genius in the room. He was the person willing to sit with one until he finally stopped hiding. The Odyssey shows how far Matt Damon's career traveled. That ordinary Boston bench shows what he and Robin Williams left behind. If you visited it, tell me what you found there, or which Robin Williams line you would leave in chalk.